Hi, I wanted to do a little video today talking about why stress makes you tired, and then also sometimes why stress makes you wired. So, why do you get so exhausted, but then also so edgy when you're stressed? So, there's a couple little things that happen when you're stressed that we should talk about. First thing is that stress affects your sleep. So, your normal sleep cycle goes from falling asleep into deep non REM sleep, and then that goes on for a period of 60 to 90 minutes. And then you kind of wake up to a lighter level of sleep, and then you get back down into non REM sleep. And that happens several times over the first 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And then as you get closer to morning, there's less of that non REM deep restorative sleep, and there's more of the REM sleep, which is when you dream. And if you study sleep architecture, it's really kind of fascinating because different things happen in your brain and those different phases of sleep. But all told, we should get 7, 8 hours of restful, restorative sleep, and your brain does better during the day when you've gone through all those normal phases. Your brain detoxes, it processes memories, neurotransmitters are going to be more normal the next day. So when you're going through something stressful and you're not getting either enough sleep or the right phases in your night's sleep, then your brain is just not going to be healthy the next day. So those of us that are parents, if you recall, when you have a newborn and the baby's crying every couple hours and you have to feed the baby and do all those things, those first couple of months of having an infant, they cause sleep deprivation. And you remember how your brain felt the next day. Also, sometimes if you go through something really stressful, like if you have to take someone to the emergency room at 1 in the morning, or you have to, go get somebody who's in a car accident or sit by somebody's bedside if they're in the hospital, if you're spending your night up and you're stressed, so you have high adrenaline, high cortisol, then obviously you're not sleeping. Then the next day, at some point, our brains tend to crash and you're just exhausted. And I kind of jokingly call it mashed potato brain because it just feels like you're trying to push those thoughts through mashed potatoes and you're just not crisp and clear and sharp and on top of things. So that's what happens when you have chronic stress. Your sleep cycles are disrupted. The next thing that you need to think about is that when you're not sleeping well, you get an imbalance between GABA and glutamate in the brain. And those are two neurotransmitters that are, in some respects, opposite. So, glutamate is excitatory to the brain and it stimulates your neurons to send signals down their neurons into the synapses and things happen. And GABA is calming. So glutamate is stimulatory, GABA is calming, and there's supposed to be a balance between those two. Kind of like, watching a football game. There's, fourth down, you're on the 2 yard line trying to make that touchdown, the last play of the game. Everybody's adrenaline is up. And that's when glutamate is really high. And then you throw the winning touchdown and everybody celebrates. And then later GABA comes in and it's calming. So our life is supposed to be a blend of those two things. But when you're stressed, you tend to have a lot more glutamate at most times and not enough GABA. And that's why you just don't feel relaxed. That's where stress reduction exercises come in. Deep breathing, yoga, meditation, prayer, listening to music, taking a bath, doing all of those things that bring down your glutamate and enhance GABA. So when you're stressed, be aware that your brain is much more stimulated by that glutamate, and you need to do things that bring in the GABA to calm it down. Third thing is that when you're stressed, if you're anything like the rest of us, you may not eat quite perfectly. So, stress tends to cause us to stress eat. So, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's candy bars or having a Coke or ice cream or chips or fast food, whatever your brain craves is what you're going to want to eat when you're stressed. The story I tell people is when I grew up, one of my fondest memories of time with dad was he would take us to the ice cream parlor. And that's what we did in the summer. Mom usually didn't want to go, so it was what dad did. He would take us at the end of a long summer day, and we would just go get ice cream. And it was just our time just that special time with dad. So for me, when I would get stressed in my young adult years, I wanted ice cream. I tell people I got through medical school by eating an enormous bowl of ice cream every night. So that was just sort of what I did. I'm not saying it was the right thing to do, but for me, that was my comfort food. For you, it might be pizza, it could be Doritos, whatever it is. Be aware of what your emotional triggers are, of what you reach for when you're stressed. And then when you're stressed, try not to reach for those foods and try to make healthier choices because it's just going to cause your brain to be more imbalanced, and just not good for you. The other thing that happens when you're eating poorly is you're not getting enough nutrients. You may not be getting enough protein compared to the carbs that you're taking in. You also tend to have blood sugar spikes. And here's something to think about is if you have that ice cream or the potato chips, then you get a big surge of glucose, blood sugar, and then your body has to make insulin to process that sugar. Insulin is actually it's sedating to your brain. So, people talk about Thanksgiving, everybody wants to go in the living room and take a nap. And it's not really usually the turkey, it's the starches. But if you have a big load of carbohydrates, then you get an insulin surge, and insulin makes you feel sleepy and it makes your brain slow down. Another thing that happens when you're stressed is you have less conversion of T4 to T3. And what I mean by that is the thyroid hormone T4 is the main one made by the thyroid gland. But T4 is not as biologically active in the cells as T3. So T3 is the sort of, I call it the Superman of thyroid hormones. So your body has to convert T4 into the active form, which is T3, and then the T3 will get into your cells where it drives your metabolism. It gives you energy. It helps that cell do what it's supposed to do. But when you're stressed, that conversion of T4 to T3 goes way down, and therefore you're going to be tired. So that's another reason why you're tired with chronic stress. Next thing, this kind of makes sense. When you're stressed, you're probably, well, I don't know, some of you are probably thinking, I need to go to the gym. But a lot of us think, oh, I'm just too busy. I'm too stressed. No, I don't want to go. I'll go tomorrow. It's very easy to just put the exercise routine on hold, either because you can't, because you're sitting in the hospital, with your son for a week, or other things have happened. Let's say you just went through an extended power outage from a hurricane, or whatever. There are just times that you can't exercise, and we totally get that. But if you're stressed and you continue to push off exercise, then that's not good either, because your brain is not going to be healthy. And that energy boost that we get from regular exercise, you're not going to have that because you're not exercising. So short term, you do what you have to do, but stress is not an excuse to stop exercising completely. Last thing is just when we're stressed, sometimes we may not make the best choices. So this could be overspending. So let's say you're stressed and for you it's shopping online, or you go to the outlet mall and you spend a lot of money. So sometimes we tend to overspend when we're stressed because our brain is just not quite balanced and we don't make the right decisions. Sometimes we isolate ourselves. We don't connect with family and friends. Sometimes we isolate ourselves from our spouse or our children. Sometimes we withdraw socially from friends, and that is not going to give you energy, and that's just not helpful. And then sometimes people that are stressed are just lazy. They don't do those extra projects. They maybe find excuses to call off of work. And all of these things are behaviors that, if they're ongoing, they're going to lead to less success in life. So when you're going through something stressful, certainly we understand that there's an initial time that you have to buckle down and do what you have to do to get through that stressful circumstance. But be aware of some of these things, because if the stress is prolonged for days or weeks or months, you don't want to fall into the habit of laziness or poor nutrition or not getting enough sleep or any of these things that maybe you could do a little bit better job at paying attention to, because you may not be able to fix everything in life. And there's a lot of stressors that happen that we can't fix at all. But we do have choice over our response to them. We have a choice as to when we go to bed, as to what we do for exercise, what we're putting in our mouth, and what we're spending our time on. So even if you feel like there's just no way I can do all of these things, now's not the time, just remember that there's always something more that you can do. You can do something. So get yourself through the stressful time by cultivating as many of the good health habits as you can, and you will weather the storm much better. Hopefully this was helpful, and God bless.